Hey everyone, welcome back. If this is your first time here, hi, I'm Alex, and this is English in Fluency, the place where we make English feel less like homework and more like a conversation with a friend. And today, today, we've got something really warm and really useful for you. Stick with me for the next few minutes because by the end of this video, you are going to understand exactly how English speakers cheer each other up, push each other forward, and say, "You've got this," in like 20 different natural ways. Sounds good? Okay, let's get into it. So here's the thing about encouragement. It's everywhere in English. Your boss says it, your friends say it, your gym buddy screams it at you when you're trying to finish that last rep. Your mom says it before a big exam. Even strangers say it sometimes, like a barista who notices you're having a rough day. But here's the problem. A lot of English learners, even ones who are pretty good, B1 level and above, they freeze a little when someone encourages them in fast natural speech. Why? Because encouragement language is sneaky. It's full of short phrases, casual tone, sometimes sarcasm mixed with warmth, and it moves fast. So today, we're not going to study a boring list of phrases. Instead, I'm going to tell you a story. A real, flowing, emotional story about two people. And through that story, you're going to absorb how encouragement actually sounds in real English. Then, after the story, we'll slow down together and look at the key expressions so they stick in your brain like glue. Before we dive in, let me just say this clearly, because I want you to get the most out of this. This is B1 level listening practice. That means the speed is natural, but not too fast. The vocabulary is everyday vocabulary, not academic, not rare. And the goal isn't just to understand the words, it's to catch the feeling behind them. Encouragement isn't just information, it's emotion wrapped in words. So as you listen, try to notice not just what is being said, but how it's being said. The tone, the warmth, the little pauses. Okay? Let's begin the story. Our story today is about a young woman named Mira. Mira had just moved to a new city for a new job, and if you've ever moved somewhere completely new, you know that feeling, right? That mix of excitement and absolute terror. New people, new streets, new rules nobody tells you about, like which coffee shop has the good seats, or which bus actually shows up on time. Mira was working as a junior graphic designer at a small creative studio, and on her very first week, she felt like she had walked into a room where everyone spoke a secret language, and she had missed the lesson where they explained it. Her team lead was a guy named Daniel. Daniel had been at the studio for almost 6 years, and he had this calm, steady energy. You know the type. The person who never seems to panic even when the printer is broken and the client is calling and someone spilled coffee on the only working laptop. Daniel noticed pretty quickly that Mira was struggling, not with her actual design skills, those were great, but with her confidence. She kept apologizing for things that weren't even mistakes. She'd say sorry before sharing an idea. She'd whisper her opinions in meetings like she was scared someone would laugh at her. One afternoon, Mira was sitting at her desk, staring at her screen, and she had this look on her face. You know the look. The one where you're not really seeing the screen anymore? You're just lost somewhere in your own head. Worrying. Daniel walked by, stopped, and said, "Hey, you all right? You've been staring at that same logo for like 20 minutes. And Mira, without even looking up, said, "Yeah, I'm fine. I don't know. I feel like I'm behind everyone else here. Like maybe they made a mistake hiring me. Now, here's where the encouragement starts, and I want you to really listen to how natural and casual this sounds, because this is exactly how real people talk, not like a textbook. Daniel pulled up a chair, sat down next to her, and said, "Okay, first of all, that's just not true. And I think you know that too, deep down. You've only been here a week. A week? Nobody expects you to know everything in a week. Heck, it took me like 3 months before I stopped calling the coffee machine the thing." And Mira actually laughed a little bit at that, which was the first crack in her worried mood. Daniel continued, "Look, I've seen your sketches. The ones for the bakery client? Genuinely, those were some of the freshest ideas I've seen from anyone on this team in a long time. You've got a good eye, Mira. You just need to trust it a bit more." Mira looked at him, kind of surprised, and said, "You really think so? I almost didn't even submit those. I thought they were too weird." And Daniel said, "That weirdness is exactly what makes them good. Don't lose that. Seriously, don't water yourself down to fit in. We hired you because of what makes you different, not in spite of it." This is such a key moment, right? Because encouragement often isn't just, "You can do it." Sometimes it's specific. It points at something real. Daniel didn't just say generic nice words. He referenced an actual thing Mira did well. That's a powerful pattern in English encouragement. People often say things like, "I really liked how you handled that," or "That thing you did was great," instead of just "good job." It feels more real, more believable. So Mira took a breath, and she said, "Okay, okay, thank you. I think I just needed to hear that." And Daniel said, "Anytime. Seriously, my door's always open. Well, I don't have a door, but you know what I mean? My desk is always open." They both laughed at that, and something shifted in Mira's posture. She sat up a little straighter. She went back to her screen with slightly different energy. Let's pause here in the story for a second, because I want to highlight something important about how encouragement sounds in natural English. Notice Daniel didn't use big fancy words. He used things like genuinely, seriously, heck. Don't water yourself down. These are everyday expressions, casual, warm, human. This is the actual texture of spoken English encouragement. It's not Shakespeare. It's not a motivational poster. It's a real person talking with real feeling. Now, let's keep going with the story, because things get a bit more challenging for Mira soon. And that's where more encouragement language comes into play, this time from a different person. A few weeks passed, and Mira slowly started to feel more comfortable. She made friends with a co-worker named Priya, who worked in marketing for the same studio. Priya had this big, loud laugh that you could hear from across the office, and she had a way of making even boring Monday mornings feel a little lighter. Mira and Priya started grabbing lunch together most days, and they became close, pretty fast, the way people sometimes do when they're both kind of new to a city and looking for a friend. One day, the studio got a huge project. A well-known clothing brand wanted a full rebrand, new logo, new color palette, new everything. It was the biggest project the studio had taken in years, and Daniel chose a small team to work on it. Mira was on that team. She was thrilled, but also terrified, because this time the pressure was real. This wasn't some small bakery logo anymore. This was a brand that millions of people would see. The night before the big pitch meeting, where the team would present their ideas to the client, Mira couldn't sleep. She kept redoing her concepts over and over, deleting things, starting again, deleting again. At around midnight, she texted Priya, just venting, saying something like, "I don't think I'm ready for this. I think I'm going to mess this up tomorrow and let everyone down." Priya called her immediately, didn't even text back, just called. And when Mira picked up, half asleep but mostly just anxious, Priya said, "Okay, listen to me. You are not going to mess this up. I've literally seen your designs. They're incredible. You're just panicking because it's late and you're tired, and your brain is doing that thing where it makes everything feel 10 times worse than it actually is." Mira laughed weakly and said, "Yeah, maybe." And Priya said, "Not maybe, definitely. Look, here's what I want you to do. Close your laptop right now. I mean it. Close it. You've done the work. You've put in the hours. And honestly, overworking it at midnight isn't going to make it better. It's just going to make you more tired and more stressed for tomorrow." This is another beautiful piece of natural encouragement, right? Notice the structure. Priya didn't just say nice things. She gave practical advice wrapped in encouragement. Close your laptop. You've done the work. That's actionable. Real encouragement in English often comes packaged with action, not just emotion. People say things like, "You've got this. Now go get some rest." Or, "You've prepared enough. Trust the process." It's emotional support, plus a nudge toward doing something helpful. Mira said, okay, I'll close it. But what if they hate my ideas tomorrow?" And Priya said, "Then we adjust. That's literally how every creative job works. Nobody nails it perfectly every single time, and that's okay. But Mira, even if by some tiny chance they don't love it right away, that doesn't mean you failed. It just means there's a conversation to have. You're going to be fine. I promise." There's a phrase right there worth noticing. You're going to be fine. It's so simple, right? Just 5 words. But it carries so much warmth when said with the right tone. In English, short phrases like, "You'll be fine," "You've got this," "You're going to do great," are incredibly common. And they don't need to be complicated to be powerful. Sometimes the simplest words carry the most comfort. The next morning came, and Mira walked into the studio feeling nervous, but a little calmer than the night before, thanks to Priya's call. Daniel gathered the team in the meeting room about 30 minutes before the client arrived. He looked around at everyone, Mira, Priya, and 2 other designers named Thomas and Layla, and he said, "All right, everyone, deep breath. You've all worked so hard on this, and honestly, what you've put together is genuinely impressive. I'm proud of this team." Then Daniel looked specifically at Mira, because he could see she still looked nervous, and he said, "Mira, hey, you okay?" Mira nodded, but not very convincingly, and Daniel said, "You don't have to pretend you're not nervous. Nerves are normal. They actually mean you care. But don't let them convince you that you're not ready, because you are ready. Just trust what you already know." I love this line because it teaches something really important about encouragement in English. It doesn't always mean telling someone to stop feeling nervous. Sometimes it means accepting the nervousness and reframing it. "Nerves mean you care" is such a natural, comforting way to flip a negative feeling into something positive. English speakers do this a lot. They validate the feeling first, then redirect it towards something hopeful. The client arrived, a sharp-looking woman named Ms. Whitfield, along with two of her associates. The team presented their ideas one by one. Tomas went first, then Layla. Then it was Mira's turn. Her voice shook just a tiny bit at the start, but as she kept talking about her concept, the colors she chose, the story behind the new logo design, something happened. She got into a flow. She forgot to be nervous, because she was talking about something she genuinely loved. When she finished, there was a small silence, the kind that feels like it lasts forever, but is actually just a few seconds. Then Ms. Whitfield smiled and said, "This is exactly the direction we were hoping for. I love the boldness of this concept." Mira felt this wave of relief wash over her, like all the tension in her shoulders just melted away in an instant. After the meeting ended and the clients left, the whole team kind of exhaled together, and then erupted into excitement. Priya ran over and hugged Mira, saying, "I told you! I told you you'd be amazing!" Daniel walked over too, smiling, and said, "See? What did I tell you weeks ago? You just needed to trust yourself a little more. Look at you now." Mira, still a bit in shock, said, "I can't believe that actually went well." And Daniel said, "Believe it. You earned this. Every bit of it." Now, let's slow down here in the story for a moment, because the line, "You earned this," is such a strong piece of encouragement vocabulary. It's different from just saying, "Good job," or "Well done." It implies effort. It implies a journey. It tells the person that their success wasn't luck. It was the result of their hard work. This is a really meaningful type of encouragement because it builds long-term confidence, not just a quick compliment. As the weeks went on, Mira's confidence grew steadily. She started speaking up more in meetings. She stopped apologizing before sharing her ideas. And one day, almost like the story circling back to its beginning, Mira noticed a new employee at the studio, a guy named Oscar, who had just started that week. Oscar was sitting at his desk, looking exactly the way Mira had looked months before, lost, anxious, staring blankly at his screen. Mira walked over, pulled up a chair just like Daniel had done for her, and said, "Hey, you doing okay?" Oscar looked up, a little surprised, and said, "Yeah, I think so. I just feel like everyone here already knows what they're doing, and I'm still trying to figure out where the bathroom is." Mira laughed and said, "Oh, trust me, I felt exactly like that. Like, exactly. It took me weeks before I felt like I belonged here." Oscar asked, "Really? You seem so confident now." And Mira smiled and said, "I wasn't always. Someone told me something once that really stuck with me. They said the nervousness doesn't mean you're not ready, it just means you care. And honestly, that helped me more than anything else anyone said to me back then." Oscar nodded slowly, like he was actually absorbing the words, not just hearing them. Mira continued, "Look, your ideas are going to be good. Maybe not perfect at first. Nobody's are. But you're going to get better every single day, just by showing up and trying. And if you ever feel stuck or unsure, just come find me, okay? I remember exactly what this feels like, and I promise it gets easier." Oscar smiled, a real smile this time, and said, "Thanks, Mira. I really needed to hear that today." And Mira said, "I know. I remember needing to hear it too." And that's where our story gently closes, with the encouragement passing from one person to another, like a small torch being handed down. Daniel encouraged Mira. Priya encouraged Mira. And eventually, Mira became the one offering that same warmth to someone new. That's actually how encouragement works in real life, too, isn't it? It travels. It gets passed along. Someone lifts you up, and eventually, you find yourself lifting someone else up, too. Okay, now let's take a breath together and shift into the practice part of this video. Because I don't want you to just enjoy this story. I want you to actually absorb the language inside it. Let's go through some of the key encouragement expressions we just heard, and I'll explain how you can use them yourself. The first one is, "You've got this." This is probably one of the most common encouragement phrases in English. It basically means, "I believe you can do it." You can use it before someone takes a test, gives a speech, has an interview, or faces anything challenging. For example, if your friend is nervous about a job interview, you could say, "Hey, you've got this. You've prepared so well." It's short, warm, and very natural. The second expression is, "Don't water yourself down." This one is a little more advanced but really beautiful. It means don't make yourself smaller or less unique just to fit in or please others. Daniel used this with Mira when he told her not to hide the parts of her ideas that made them special. You might use this when encouraging a friend who's hiding their personality or opinions because they're scared of judgment. You could say, "Don't water yourself down, just be yourself. People will appreciate the real you." The third one is, "You earned this." This phrase is used after someone succeeds at something, and it emphasizes that the success came from hard work, not luck. If your coworker gets a promotion after months of working overtime, you could say, "Congratulations, you really earned this." It feels respectful and validating. The fourth expression is, "Nerves mean you care." This is a lovely way to reframe anxiety in a positive light. Instead of telling someone, "Don't be nervous," which honestly doesn't help much, this phrase acknowledges the nervousness but gives it a positive meaning. You could say this to a friend before a wedding speech, a presentation, or any nerve-wracking event. It's okay to feel nervous. It just means you care about doing well. The fifth one is, "You'll be fine," or "You're going to be fine." Such a simple phrase, but incredibly comforting when said sincerely. It's often used right before something stressful happens, like an exam, a flight, a doctor's appointment. Short, warm, reassuring. The sixth expression is, "Trust yourself," or "Trust what you already know." This type of encouragement reminds someone that they already have the skills or knowledge they need. They just need confidence to use it. It's great for moments of self-doubt, like before a performance or a big decision. The seventh one is, "That's literally how it works," or similar phrases that normalize failure or struggle. Priya used something like this when she told Mira that not every idea works perfectly, and that's just part of creative work. This kind of encouragement helps someone feel less alone in their struggle, reminding them that imperfection is normal, not a personal failure. And the eighth expression worth remembering is something like, "I remember exactly what this feels like." This is a beautiful form of encouragement based on shared experience. It tells the other person, "I'm not just saying empty words. I genuinely understand what you're going through, because I've been there too." This builds trust and connection, and it often makes encouragement feel more sincere. Now, here's something I really want you to notice, something that connects all of this together. Encouragement in English rarely sounds like a motivational speech from a movie. It's not loud or dramatic most of the time. It's usually quiet, casual, even a little clumsy sometimes, full of pauses, laughs, and simple words. Hey, you okay? You've got this. I believe in you. You're going to be fine. These are small phrases, but they carry huge emotional weight, especially when said by someone who actually means it. I also want to point out the tone patterns you might have noticed in the story. When people encourage each other in English, their voice often softens. There's a gentler rhythm. Sometimes there's a slight pause before the encouraging phrase, like Daniel pausing before saying, "You're ready," to Mira. That pause adds weight. It makes the words feel more sincere, more thought through, rather than just an automatic response. Let's actually practice a little bit together right now, because listening is great, but using the language yourself helps it stick even more. I want you to imagine a friend of yours is nervous about starting a new job, very similar to Mira's situation at the beginning of our story. Try saying this out loud, even if you're sitting alone right now. Nobody's watching. It's just you and me. Try saying, "Hey, I know starting something new is scary, but you've got this. You're more capable than you think, and it's totally normal to feel nervous on day one." Did you say it out loud? Good. That little bit of speaking practice really helps cement the phrases in your memory. Let's try one more. Imagine your friend just failed at something, maybe an exam, maybe a job interview, and they're feeling really down. Try saying, "Hey, this doesn't define you. One bad day doesn't erase everything you've worked for. You'll bounce back from this. I know you will." Notice the phrase "bounce back." That's another lovely piece of encouragement vocabulary, meaning to recover quickly from a setback or disappointment. Let's add a few more useful expressions you might hear in similar real conversations, expanding a bit beyond just our story, because I want to give you a wide toolkit of encouragement language today. People often say, "Keep going, you're so close." This is used when someone is in the middle of a difficult task and starting to feel like giving up, like finishing a marathon, studying for a huge exam, or working through a tough project. It reminds them that the end is near, and quitting now would be a shame. Another common one is, "Don't be so hard on yourself." This phrase is used when someone is being overly critical of their own performance or mistakes. It's incredibly common in everyday English conversations, especially among friends. If someone says, "I can't believe I messed that up, I'm so stupid," a kind response would be, "Hey, don't be so hard on yourself. Everyone makes mistakes. It's not a big deal." There's also, "I'm rooting for you," which means, "I'm supporting you. I want you to succeed." This phrase comes from sports, like rooting for a team, but it's used in everyday encouragement too. You could text a friend before their big presentation and say, "Good luck today, I'm rooting for you." Another lovely phrase is, "You're stronger than you think." This is often used during emotional hardships, like after a breakup, a loss, or a difficult life change. It reminds the person of inner strength they might not currently feel. There's also the phrase, "Small steps still count," which is used to encourage someone who feels like their progress is too slow or insignificant. For example, someone learning a new language, maybe even English itself, might feel discouraged because they're not fluent yet. A friend might say, "Hey, small steps still count. Look how far you've already come." And one more beautiful one. "It's okay to not have it all figured out." This phrase comforts people who feel lost or uncertain about their future, their career, or their life direction. It's incredibly common among young adults navigating big life decisions. Now, here's a fun little challenge for you. Something I want you to actually do, not just think about. Pause this video for a second, or just keep listening if you'd rather do it after. And think of someone in your life right now who might need a little encouragement. Maybe it's a friend going through something hard. Maybe it's a family member nervous about a decision. Maybe it's even yourself. Because hey, sometimes we need to encourage ourselves too. Think about which phrase from today's lesson fits that situation best. You've got this. Don't be so hard on yourself. Small steps still count. Whichever one feels right, try sending that message to that person today, in English if you're practicing, or even just internally to yourself if it's for you. Real practice happens when we actually use language, not just absorb it passively. Let's go back to our story one more time, just briefly, because I want to add a small additional scene that ties everything together nicely. Something sweet to close out the emotional arc before we wrap up the lesson portion completely. A few months after the big rebrand project succeeded, the studio held a little celebration. Nothing huge, just pizza and some music in the office on a Friday evening. Mira stood near the window with a slice of pizza in her hand, looking out at the city lights, thinking about how different she felt now compared to her first week there. Daniel walked up next to her and said, "Hard to believe it's been almost 6 months, huh?" Mira smiled and said, "Yeah, honestly, I almost quit during my first 2 weeks here. I thought I wasn't cut out for this." Daniel looked at her, genuinely surprised, and said, "Really? I had no idea you were thinking about quitting." Mira laughed softly and said, "Yeah, well, you talked me out of feeling that way without even fully knowing it. That conversation we had, about trusting myself, about not watering down my ideas, that really changed something for me." Daniel smiled, a little humbled, and said, "I'm really glad I said something then. Sometimes you don't realize how much a few words can matter to someone else." Priya joined them with her own slice of pizza, overhearing the last part of the conversation, and added, "That's so true. I remember that night you called me, freaking out about the big pitch. Look at you now, basically running half the design decisions around here." Mira shook her head, smiling, and said, "I couldn't have done any of it without you both, honestly." And Daniel said, "Nah, you did the work. We just reminded you that you could." This final exchange is such a perfect closing note for our lesson today, because it captures something true about encouragement. The people offering encouragement often don't fully realize the size of the impact their words make. A simple sentence, said at the right moment, can completely shift someone's confidence, their mindset, even the direction of their life. And that's kind of beautiful when you think about it, isn't it? Words are so much more powerful than we usually give them credit for. Now, let's quickly review everything we covered today, gently, conversationally, so it really settles into your memory before we finish up. We followed Mira's journey from a nervous new employee to a confident designer, and along the way, we picked up natural English encouragement phrases like, "You've got this," "Don't water yourself down," "You earned this," "Nerves mean you care," "You'll be fine," "Trust yourself." I remember exactly what this feels like. Keep going. You're so close. Don't be so hard on yourself. I'm rooting for you. You're stronger than you think. Small steps still count. and it's okay to not have it all figured out. These phrases are not just vocabulary to memorize for a test somewhere, they're tools. Real tools you can use in your actual life, with actual people, in actual emotional moments. Maybe you'll use them with English-speaking friends, coworkers, or even just inside your own head when you need a little boost. Language learning becomes so much richer when we connect it to real human emotion like this, instead of just memorizing isolated words from a list. I also want to remind you about something important regarding listening practice in general, especially at the B1 level. It's totally okay if you didn't catch 100% of every single word today. Listening comprehension grows gradually, through repeated exposure, through context, through stories just like this one. If there were a few words or phrases you missed, that's actually a great sign. It means you're at the right level for growth. Not too easy, not too overwhelming. I'd genuinely encourage you to come back and listen to this video again tomorrow, or even later today. The second listen always reveals so much more than the first. Your brain starts catching details it missed before. If you really want to challenge yourself further, try listening without looking at any subtitles first. Just trust your ears, even if you don't catch everything. Then go back and listen again with subtitles on, if you're watching on a platform that provides them, just to confirm what you understood and fill in any gaps. This back-and-forth method genuinely works wonders for improving listening skills over time. Also, here's a small personal tip from me to you, something I've noticed really helps language learners specifically with emotional or conversational content like today's lesson. Try repeating some of the key sentences out loud after me, like a little shadowing exercise. For example, after I say, "You've got this," pause the video and say it yourself, out loud, with feeling, like you're actually saying it to someone who needs it. This kind of active repetition, combining listening and speaking together, helps these phrases move from passive knowledge into active, usable language much faster. Now, before we completely wrap up, I want to talk about why this topic, encouragement language specifically, really matters beyond just English class. Encouragement is one of those things that connects us as humans, no matter what language we're speaking. When you learn how to genuinely encourage someone in English, you're not just learning vocabulary, you're learning how to build real relationships, real connections in a new language. Imagine being able to comfort a friend, support a coworker, or motivate someone you care about, all in fluent, natural-sounding English, without having to think hard about the right words. That's such a meaningful skill, way beyond just passing a test or an exam. And honestly, this works both ways too. As you keep learning English and facing your own challenges along the way, moments of confusion, moments where you feel behind, moments where speaking feels scary, I want you to remember the phrases we learned today, and maybe, just maybe, say a few of them to yourself. You've got this. Small steps still count. It's okay to not have it all figured out yet. Because learning a language is honestly a lot like Mira's journey in our story today. Nervous beginnings, slow growth, supportive people along the way, and eventually, real, earned confidence. Let me add a bit more to this story, actually, because there's another part I really want to share with you, a part that happened a little later. maybe around 8 or 9 months after Mira first started at the studio, and I think it teaches us a slightly different shade of encouragement, one we haven't fully talked about yet. By this point, Mira had become genuinely respected on the team. She wasn't the nervous new hire anymore, not even close. She had her own little corner desk by the window, decorated with small plants and a couple of sketches pinned to the wall, stuff she'd drawn just for fun, not for any client. But here's the thing about confidence. It's not a straight line, is it? It goes up, it dips, it wobbles a bit, and then it climbs again. And one week, Mira hit one of those dips. The studio took on a new client, a tech startup this time, completely different from anything Mira had worked on before. The founder, a guy named Felix, was, let's just say, particular, extremely particular. He rejected the first round of concepts almost immediately, barely even looking at them, and said something like, "This just isn't what I imagined at all. I thought you guys were supposed to be creative." Ouch. That stung. Mira had poured hours into those concepts, and hearing them dismissed so quickly hit her harder than she expected. She went home that evening feeling that old familiar weight pressing on her chest. That same feeling from her first week. The one where you start questioning whether you're actually good at your job or if everyone's just been being polite this whole time. She texted Priya again, just like she had done months before the big pitch, except this time the message was shorter, heavier. It just said, "I think I'm losing my touch. Today was rough." Priya called almost instantly, again, because that's just who Priya was, the type of friend who drops everything when you need her. "Okay, talk to me," Priya said. "What happened?" Mira explained the whole thing. Felix's blunt reaction, the dismissive tone, the feeling of her ideas being thrown away without even a real conversation about them. Priya listened quietly for a bit, and then she said something really interesting, something a little different from the encouragement we'd heard earlier in our story. She said, "Okay, first, that guy sounds genuinely difficult to work with, and that's not really about your talent. That's about his communication style, which honestly sounds pretty rough. But second, and I say this with love, one tough client reaction doesn't erase 8 months of you absolutely killing it at this job." Mira sighed and said, I know. It's just, it really got to me today." And Priya said, "That's allowed. You're allowed to feel got to. You don't have to bounce back instantly like some emotionless robot. Feel it tonight, let it sting a little, that's human. But tomorrow, you go back in there, and you remember that one client's bad mood isn't a verdict on your entire skill set." This is such an important nuance in encouragement, something I really want you to notice. Sometimes the most helpful encouragement isn't immediately cheerful or upbeat. Sometimes it starts by validating the hard feeling first. That's allowed. You're allowed to feel got to, before moving toward hope. English speakers do this a lot in real, emotionally mature conversations. They don't rush straight to cheer up, because honestly, that can feel dismissive if it comes too fast. Instead, they sit with the difficulty for a moment, acknowledge it's real, and then gently guide the person toward perspective. The next morning, Mira walked into the studio still feeling a little bruised from the day before, but a little steadier too, thanks to that conversation with Priya. Daniel noticed her quieter energy almost immediately, because by now, he'd gotten pretty good at reading the room when it came to Mira. He walked over, leaned against the edge of her desk, and said, "Heard Felix wasn't exactly gentle with his feedback yesterday." Mira laughed a tired little laugh and said, "Yeah, that's one way to put it." Daniel nodded and said, "For what it's worth, I've dealt with him before on a smaller project last year. He's like that with everyone. It's not personal, even though it definitely feels personal in the moment." Mira said, "It really did feel personal yesterday." And Daniel said, "I bet. But listen, here's something I've learned over the years doing this job. Tough feedback doesn't always mean bad work. Sometimes it just means a client who doesn't know exactly what they want yet, and they're taking that frustration out on the first thing presented to them." He continued, "Doesn't make it fun to receive. I get that. But don't let it shrink you. You're going to go back in there with the team. You're going to ask him better questions about what he's actually picturing, and you're going to figure this out together. That's literally the job. More conversation, not less effort on your part." Mira appreciated this. You could see it in how her shoulders relaxed slightly. And then Daniel added something that really stuck with her, something simple but powerful. "Hey, by the way, the work itself was strong. I looked at it again last night, actually. The direction was smart, he just hadn't articulated his own vision clearly yet. That's not a reflection of your ability. That's just where the project is right now in its process. So here, notice this pattern again. Just like earlier in our story, Daniel grounds his encouragement in something specific and honest, not just empty positivity. He doesn't say, 'Don't worry, everything's great,' because that would feel hollow given what actually happened. Instead, he gives context. This client is like that with everyone. And reassurance based on real assessment, the work itself was strong. This combination of honesty and warmth makes encouragement feel trustworthy rather than just comforting fluff. Over the following days, Mira and the team went back to Felix, this time asking more detailed questions before diving into new concepts. Slowly, painfully at first, but then more clearly, Felix's actual vision started to come into focus. Turns out, he didn't dislike creativity at all. He just had a hard time putting his ideas into words, and once the team learned to ask the right questions, things flowed so much more smoothly. Within 2 weeks, they landed on a concept Felix genuinely loved, and he actually apologized, a little awkwardly, for how harsh his first reaction had been. When the project wrapped up successfully, Mira mentioned this whole experience to Oscar one afternoon, the new employee from earlier in our story, who, by this point, had been working at the studio for a couple of months himself, and was settling in nicely, thanks in part to Mira's continued support. She told him, "You know, even after 8 months here, I still have rough days. Just last month, a client basically tore apart my first round of concepts." Oscar looked surprised and said, "Really? You always seem so calm about everything now." Mira smiled and said, "I wasn't calm that night, trust me. I cried a little, honestly. But the next day, I went back in anyway. That's kind of the whole secret, if there even is one. It's not about never struggling. It's about showing up again after the struggle." This moment teaches such a beautiful, honest lesson about encouragement and growth in general, doesn't it? Confidence isn't the absence of difficulty. It's the willingness to keep going, even when things get hard again. And that's such a valuable thing to remember, both in language learning and in life generally. You will have rough days with your English too. Days where a conversation goes poorly, where someone doesn't understand you, where you feel like you're back at square one. That's okay. That's actually completely normal. The goal isn't perfection. The goal is showing up again tomorrow. Now, let's expand our practice section a bit more too, because I want to give you even more tools today. More phrases drawn from this extended part of our story. Plus, a few additional ones I think you'll find really useful in everyday English conversations involving encouragement. From this part of the story, we got the phrase, "that's allowed," meaning it's okay or acceptable to feel a certain way. This is such a gentle, validating phrase. If a friend says, "I feel so embarrassed about what happened," you could respond, "Hey, that's allowed. You're human. It happens to everyone." We also got, "Don't let it shrink you," a lovely, slightly poetic way of saying, don't let a difficult experience make you feel smaller or less confident than you actually are. You might say this to someone after a harsh comment from a boss or even a stranger online, something like, "I know that comment hurt, but don't let it shrink you. You know your own worth." Another phrase worth remembering is, "That's literally the job," or more generally, "That's just part of it," used to normalize a difficulty as a natural part of a process, rather than a personal failure. If someone says, "Ugh, I had to redo this whole report 3 times," a friend might respond, "That's just part of the job sometimes. Doesn't mean you're bad at it." There's also the phrase, "showing up again after the struggle," which beautifully captures resilience without sounding overly dramatic. You could use a version of this in conversation like, "Honestly, the hardest part isn't avoiding mistakes. It's just showing up again the next day." Let's practice these together too, just like before. Imagine your friend just received some harsh feedback at work, similar to what happened to Mira with Felix. Try saying out loud, "Hey, that's allowed. Feel upset about it tonight if you need to. But don't let it shrink you. One tough conversation doesn't erase everything good you've done." Did you say it? Great. Let's keep building this skill together. Here's one more practice scenario for you. Imagine someone close to you is nervous about returning to something after a big mistake, maybe going back to driving after a small accident, or returning to public speaking after freezing up once before. Try saying, "I know that was rough, and it's totally okay to feel nervous about doing it again. But showing up again is literally the bravest part. The rest will follow." Notice how natural and flowing that sounds. Not memorized, not robotic, just real, caring speech. I also want to take a moment here to talk a bit more broadly about why encouragement language varies so much, depending on the relationship between the speakers. Because this is something that really affects how natural your own English will sound when you start using these phrases yourself. Notice how Daniel, as a slightly older, more experienced team leader, often encouraged Mira with a mix of warmth and gentle authority. Phrases like, "Trust what you already know," or "Don't let it shrink you." There's a guiding quality to his words, like a mentor steadying someone. Priya, on the other hand, being a close friend and peer, encouraged Mira with much more casual, almost teasing warmth. Things like, I told you you'd be amazing." Between close friends, encouragement often carries more humor, more familiarity, sometimes even gentle teasing mixed in with the support. This matters because if you're learning English and trying to encourage, say, your boss's child during a school event, You probably wouldn't use the same casual tone you'd use with your best friend. You might lean more toward Daniel's style, calm, supportive, a little more measured. But if you're texting your best friend who just bombed a test, Priya's style, energetic, a little dramatic, full of exclamation points, basically, fits much better. Paying attention to this kind of social context is honestly a huge part of sounding natural in any language, not just English. Let's also talk briefly about body language and tone, since this video is audio-focused, but it's worth mentioning because it connects so closely to how these phrases actually land in real life. When people say encouraging things in English, their voice often drops slightly in pitch, becomes warmer, sometimes slower too, especially on the most important words. Listen again sometime to how someone says, "You've got this." Notice how the word "got" often gets just a tiny bit of extra emphasis, a little stretch, almost like the speaker is physically pushing the words toward the listener with their voice. This vocal warmth is honestly just as important as the words themselves when it comes to making encouragement feel genuine rather than scripted. All right, before you go, I have a little favor to ask you, and I promise it's a small one. If this video helped you even a tiny bit today, whether it taught you a new phrase, gave you some good listening practice, or just made you feel a little more motivated about your English journey, please hit that like button. It genuinely helps this channel grow and helps more learners like you find these videos. And if you haven't already, subscribe to English in Fluency, because we drop new listening practice videos regularly, covering all sorts of real, natural English topics just like this one. B1 level, friendly, conversational, never boring, never overly academic. Also, I'd absolutely love to hear from you in the comments below. Tell me, what's a moment in your life when someone encouraged you with just the right words at just the right time? Or, if you're feeling brave, try writing one of today's phrases in a sentence of your own down in the comments, like maybe write your own little encouraging message to someone, even an imaginary situation. I read through comments often, and I love seeing how you all are using and practicing what we learn together here. And hey, if you know someone else who's learning English right now, maybe a friend, a classmate, a family member, consider sharing this video with them. Encouragement is honestly even more powerful when it's shared, right? Just like in our story today, where encouragement passed from Daniel to Mira, from Priya to Mira, and eventually from Mira to Oscar. Maybe this video can be a small piece of encouragement that you pass along to someone else's English learning journey too. Before we say goodbye for today, let me leave you with one final thought, something simple, but I think genuinely meaningful. Learning a new language, especially something as widely spoken and sometimes intimidating as English, takes real courage. It takes patience. It takes showing up again and again, even on days when you feel like Mira did in her first week, lost, unsure, maybe even a little scared. But just like Mira, with enough practice, enough exposure, and, yeah, enough encouragement along the way, you absolutely will get there. You've got this. I genuinely mean that, not as some empty phrase, but because I see how far you've already come just by showing up here today, listening, practicing, growing your skills one video at a time. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. It really means a lot that you choose to learn alongside me here on English in Fluency. I'll be back soon with another listening practice video, another story, another set of natural English expressions for you to discover and practice. Until then, take care of yourself. Be kind to yourself, the way Daniel and Priya were kind to Mira. And remember, every single step you take in this language, no matter how small it feels, absolutely counts. This is Alex, signing off for now. See you in the next video. Bye for now, everyone.